Guys, it is good to worship with you guys. I was thinking during worship, like, being here, worshiping you guys is actually one of my favorite parts of my week. Because I enjoy worshiping God, and being able to do it here with you guys is a privilege to me. I really, really appreciate it. This time has been an interesting one. I was talking to some people right before we got in here tonight about we've had kind of a month of not normal groups. Winter time is my favorite time in life, but there's just lots of interesting different events. We took 2 weeks off before Christmas. Then we had camp. Then we had our post-camp worship night last week, but it still wasn't normal. Everyone's still on break, and half of you guys forgot about it. So this is kind of our first week back starting the year. But this season is my favorite in life. All of my favorite things are part of winter. Cold weather might be my number one favorite thing in life other than Jesus. So wintertime is my best, me living my best life. Where I live is definitely colder than East County, but still I will leave my windows open every night because I want to see my breath in my room. That's how I want to sleep always. I want it to be freezing. Rain and gloom, also one of my favorite things, which I get to enjoy typically more during the winter. Those are a few of my favorite things. I would say, well, there's this idea, and there's memes about it. If you guys are familiar, there's a magazine called GQ, Gentleman's Quarterly. It's for guys, and they do these episodes of things that people can't live without, which is basically just people's favorite things. And so celebrities and different people go on there and they just talk about here are the things I can't live without. So I watched some of those, what are the kinds of things that people are saying they can't live without? So one guy was oh, my $1,000 sunglasses, I can't live without these. I was you could probably be okay. Trae Young, some of you guys are familiar with, he's a really trashy basketball player. He was oh, I can't live without Altoids, carries Altoids everywhere with him. I was that's a weird thing to say that you can't live without it. All right, that's fine. Once someone said cigarettes, I was all right, it's a sad life that you have, which are also ironically going to kill you. But we have this idea of man, what are the things that I can't live without? And we have plenty of things that we really enjoy, but could probably be okay without. Tonight, I want to talk about that. Because that idea of the things that we want, the things that, we feel we can't be without, is just very ingrained, not just in our culture, it's true, in America, it's true, but also just our nature. Our nature is one that just wants to be gratified all the time and is unhappy when it doesn't get what it wants, whatever it happens to want. And that's different for all of us. But we know that we are not supposed to be just driven by our impulses, desires. We talk a lot about that. And so tonight, I want to talk about something that's really important in recognizing that, in developing strength and discipline in our life as a Christian. And so tonight, I want to talk about fasting. And fasting is what's considered a spiritual discipline. It's an exercising of our faith in a practical way that helps us grow spiritually. But it's not something that we talk about a lot, or when we hear it, it's some really spiritual person over there did it one time and I heard them talk about it. But it's not a regular practice for a lot of us. And I don't think it should be that way. I think there's important things that we as Christians should understand about fasting. But fasting reminds us and reprioritizes what we really can't live without by living without something else that we deem as highly important or desirable. So I want to explain what I mean by that. So to fast something is to go without it. So if you're yeah, I'm fasting caffeine, means I'm abstaining from drinking caffeine. Now, very often, when we're talking about fasting, people are talking about food most often when they're talking about fasting. So it's abstaining from some kind of food or drink or activity or thing, normally as some kind of like religious observance. Fasting is something that's practiced by a lot of religions. Like I said, it's a spiritual principle. God has told us to do it, and so other religions have taken and adopted that and said, oh yeah, we should do that too. But like I said, it's very often food, which makes sense, because again, fasting, the first thing I mentioned is fasting reminds us what's important by taking something out that we really like or think is important or desirable to make us focus on typically spiritual things. So, eating is really easy because eating is like just our most basic need and necessity. Earlier today, some close friends of mine had a baby, and I went to go see their baby. And it's like a 6-day-old, just pile of loose skin, and it just sleeps and eats and poops. And that's like all it's going to do for a little while. It's a basic instinct. That baby came out of the womb like, I'm going to cry, I'm going to make a ruckus because something in some need of mine is not being satisfied, and I need to eat something. We are like that. I'm like readily admit, and people who are close to me know, like hunger is a very real thing in my life. Like we're not cool when I'm hungry, like almost with anybody. And I have people in my life who know when we're getting into it, they'll just stop and be like, hey, when's the last time you ate? And know that's going to solve the situation. And it's true, and it will. And it's embarrassing, but it's actually true. Again, eating is just this basic instinct. And so when we deny something that we really enjoy or is basic, essential, it gets our attention. I don't know about you guys. I experience this every day, but earlier today, I wasn't thinking about food. I didn't have any desire to think about food. I would be glad if I didn't think about food for the rest of the day. But all of a sudden, my stomach is growling, and my mind can't get away from the fact that I'm dang, I need to eat something. And I was laughing because I was thinking, I know what I'm talking about tonight. And what I'm experiencing is this basic instinct that just gets my attention all the time. Us being hungry gets our attention like nothing else. And so in our life, there are things that we can ignore, put off, things that are important that we legit are yeah, I'm just not going to do that. I can't tell you how many times in school it's I have this assignment or this report due or this deadline. And I'm I know it's really important. I know my grade depends on that. I know I might fail this class if I don't do that. I remember I had some things that were I might fail high school if I don't do that. And at the end of it, I was yeah, I'm still not going to do that. And I didn't do it. There are things if you have a car, some of you guys in here, probably mostly you juniors, any sophomores that drive already? Okay, a couple of you guys. If you have a car, the oil in your car needs to be changed. And it's something that very often, it's important, we should do it. You might actually completely ruin your car if you don't do that. But we're I'll put it off. We don't do that with hunger. We're oh, I'm hungry, I need to immediately satisfy this need right now. That's why fasting is very often associated with food, and it's helpful. Fasting, we have this negative idea about it, man, only pastors or monks practice fasting. That's an old school weird thing. And that's not the case. That's not reality. That's not what God expects. As a matter of fact, Jesus had this expectation that the people that followed him would fast. Not as something extra or super holy and religious, but he expected that the people who knew him would want to get to know him better, and he assumed that fasting would be part of that. In Matthew 6, 16 through 18, Jesus is speaking to large crowds of people, to these people who have been following him around, wanting to hear his teachings. His disciples were there among other people, and he says, when you fast, don't look gloomy like the hypocrites. because they disfigure their faces so that they're fasting. We see by others. They try to look really jacked up so everyone knows they're fasting, is what he's saying. He's like, don't do that. And then he goes on to explain, like, hey, when you're fasting, here's what you should do. And this is what honors God. So when he starts out saying that, he said, when you fast. Not like if you're a super Christian that decides to fast, just the few of you who, are like in ministry when you fast. But he's just talking to normal people. And it's like, hey, when you fast, here's how you should do it. It was this expectation that it was going to be part of their religious life, part of their life with God. And I think, I know, just like it would be true today, and it's true right now as I say this, I know that there had to be some people in that crowd that when Jesus was like, when you fast, there had to be some people who were just immediately looking down, looking around, oh, is everyone doing that? Are we supposed to be doing that? I'm not doing that. And I think that's true now. So I want to bring up and get you guys thinking about that. I'm curious, in a room of high school students, freshmen through juniors, how many of you guys have, whether it was with your family, our church, whatever, how many of you guys have participated in some kind of fast at some point? Okay, some of you actually more than I thought, but I'm not surprised by that. Here's why I want to talk about this tonight and why I think it's important. Because our spirits, God made us spiritual beings. Our spiritual side of us are tied to our physical bodies. So the things that we do physically affect us spiritually. You guys are here tonight. Good job. You physically coming here tonight, you physically listening to me right now, which hopefully you are, is going to benefit you in some spiritual way. There are things that you do physically that affect you spiritually. Worshiping is an act that we engage in doing physically, but affects us spiritually. Sex is a bunch of heads just shot up when I said that who weren't listening before. Sex is a spiritual thing. It really is. And people who have sex within marriage with their wife experience, there's a spiritual component to this that I didn't realize was associated with the physical act. There's people who have sex outside of marriage who discover, there's something way deeper to this than I thought existed. I thought I was just having fun, it just felt good, and there were no strings attached. And I didn't realize all this spiritual component, all this different, whether it's baggage, issues that I now have as a result of that. Because what I did physically affected me spiritually. Fasting is a physical thing that affects you spiritually. Psalm 69:10 says, when I wept and humbled my soul with fasting. The psalmist is writing about this time where he's lamenting, he's grieving, and part of humbling himself before God involved this practice that we're going to talk more about tonight, fasting. So here's what it does. And again, I want to make clear, fasting is the intentional abstaining from something, so very often food, or an activity, a certain thing that we enjoy, that we look to regularly. It's abstaining from that so that I can focus on something else. Obviously, I'm talking about something spiritual, very often. So fasting, we see a lot of times in Scripture, and I'm gonna cover some of them. But fasting would often be at times where people are looking for God to intervene in a situation. It'd often be fasting when I need an answer or direction from God, and so I'm going to focus on seeking that rather than on whatever, eating, whatever else people are doing, whatever they're fasting from. Because fasting makes us, and you're going to fill in this blank, fasting makes us sensitive to the voice of God. Again, it's used regularly throughout Scripture for people who wanted to hear from God. They would fast. There's a couple references you can look up later. It makes you sensitive to the voice of God. 2, fasting humbles us and reminds us that the spiritual is preeminent. It's more important over the physical. it humbles us and it reminds us that the spiritual is preeminent or more important than the physical. Like, yeah, I could eat food every day and be okay and never have my stomach growl and never get hangry. But there's some more important things in my life that I want to give attention to, that sometimes doing something as simple as fasting food directs my attention to these other things. And that is ultimately a lot more beneficial for me than that meal that I skipped or whatever thing I happen to be fasting. Joel 2, 12 through 13 is another instance where it says, even now declares the Lord, God speaking to his people, and he says, return to me with all your heart. Return to me with fasting and weeping and mourning. Rend your heart and not your garments. And so God's instructing them like, hey, part of you repenting and coming to me, humbling yourselves, is going to involve you fasting. It was this expected part of it. Because what fasting does is it says, this thing, whatever it is I'm fasting for, again, very often, like we fast, like we should, and we're going to talk about this more later, you should fast with some kind of intentionality. There should be a goal, a purpose to fasting. And so what fasting does is it says this goal that I have, the reason I'm fasting, is more important to me than my immediate satisfaction or distraction. That's what fasting does. It communicates that to God, but it also communicates that to us. It reminds us, like when, again, I'm gonna keep referencing fasting food because it's such an easy one. It's so natural, which I think is why, like, it's the most common. It's why Scripture speaks about it often. When my stomach growls, that's not pleasant. I don't like being hungry. I don't want to ever like deal with feeling really hungry. I want to like take care of that right away. But when I feel hungry and I'm like, oh, I can't eat, or I can't eat whatever certain things that I might be fasting from, it's this reminder of, okay, I would really like to do that, but I'm not going to, because whatever it is that I'm fasting about is more important than how I feel right now. It's more important than just satisfying my needs or cravings or whatever. The third thing I want to mention is that fasting honors God and it garners his favor. God wants his people to fast, and he responds when they do it. I think there's an element of God seeing, like, oh, you're really serious about this. It's not just a casual thing. You really are crying out to me about whatever, the situation or this direction or this thing that you need. And we see him in Scripture over and over responding to God's fast. To God responding to his people fasting. In Ezra chapter 8, verse 21 through 23, it says, I proclaimed a fast there at this river so that we might humble ourselves before God. There's that again. And for this reason, this is why they were fasting, to seek from him a safe journey for ourselves, our children, our goods. And then it goes on to say, like, I didn't want to ask people for help because I kept telling everybody that God was going to have our back. Can you go to the next slide? It says, so we fasted and implored our God for this, and he listened to our entreaty. God responds to his people fasting. It garners his favor. Fourth, I want to mention fasting strengthens our spirit. You know, there's this analogy that we talk about a lot, and it's true. It's great. It's simple, and it's like we experience the reality of it. The analogy of these two dogs fighting inside of us, our spiritual and our fleshly dogs fighting inside of us, and whichever one we feed grows and wins that fight. Whichever one we starve dies. So when I say fasting strengthens our spirit, what fasting does is it says to my flesh, I'm not going to give you what you want. I'm going to starve whatever things that you're craving right now, and I'm going to give my attention to the Spirit. And whatever it is that I'm fasting for, praying about, like crying out to God for, I'm going to give that priority. And so it strengthens my spirit, because the way that we tend to live life naturally is just whatever we want, we give ourselves. Some of you have developed some self-control, and convictions that you stand by. And so, you practice abstaining from things that you know you should stay away from. But some of us live life like, well, if I want to do it, I'm going to do it. If I want to go there, I'm going to go there. If I want to watch that, I'm going to watch that. If I want to drink that, then I'm going to drink that. And our flesh is just getting whatever it wants. And what fasting does is it strengthens our spirit by denying our flesh whatever it happens to want. And it's not always like, when I say denying, I'm not always talking about bad things. Like food's not a bad thing. But my desire to just always be satisfied immediately, that's not healthy. Like I need to keep that in check, because if I live my life like that, that's not going to direct me towards God. I want to mention, though, I talked about fasting strengthening our spirit. Jesus, before he went to the cross, he was in the Garden of Gethsemane fasting for 40 days, fasting because he knew he needed strength to endure all the things that were going to come. If he did it and he needed to, I want to let you know, like, how much more do we? How much more should that be part of our life when we're crying out to God? And fasting is not an attempt to manipulate God. Fasting is not like, well, God, if I don't eat this Chick-fil-A in front of me, like, you better do what I say. Like, you better do whatever I'm praying about or asking about. That's not how fasting works. Fasting is for our benefit. And we see that God favors it and responds because it's us taking him seriously over our own bodies and desires and needs. So again, fasting is not some way for me to manipulate God to just do whatever I want, tell me whatever I want, like act however I feel like he should act. But he does respond to it. He's honored by it. He favors those who are willing to do it, to pursue him. Last point I want to make about that is that fasting changes us, not God. Fasting is not going to make God different. It's going to make you different. God's going to be God. He's going to be good. He's going to be faithful. But it changes us for the better. It makes us holier. It grows in us self-control. Because again, we know if I just live my life doing whatever I feel like I want to do, that's going to steer me to some sketchy places and situations and to some things that I know don't honor God. And I realize, like, I might be, you might feel like it's a stretch to go from, well, how is just eating when you want to eat, how does that equate to, like, me sinning? And I'm not saying that those two are, like, directly related, but I am saying that a lot of us know that we very rarely deny ourselves things, and that's not good. We should regularly be denying ourselves things. There should regularly be things that, even though we recognize we want it, we're like, no, I don't think that's good for me. Or that might dishonor the Lord. I shouldn't do that. Or no, that's not going to help me in the ways that I want to grow or mature. By taking our eyes off of the things of this world, whether sinful or not, but just diverting our gaze, we can more successfully turn our attention to Jesus. One of my old students, he was I think he was a senior at this time. Yep, he was a senior. He came through my small group, through junior high group, all of high school, and he was there like most weeks, almost every week, but it was very obvious to me, and by his own, he didn't really have any kind of relationship with God. It was just like he comes to group and goes to camps and does the things, but he wasn't passionate about knowing God. I don't think he even really felt like he did. He just, for him, like going to church was like just something that you do. He had friends here, and he liked it. And randomly, later on into senior year, he hadn't come around for a little bit, and we met up, and this kid was like a different person. Super just like passionate and zealous and talking to me about how great like his life with God is going, and he was telling me about some of like the disciplines that he's been like enacting and how good things have been. And I remember meeting them like, you're like I would think that you were on drugs if I didn't know you any better, because you're just acting really weird and completely different than you have acted in the last 7 years that I've known you. And I was like, what's going on? Where did all this come from? How did you, all of a sudden you're passionate about Jesus and wanting to share the gospel with people, and you have this kind of joy in you that I hadn't seen before. And so he shared with me, he was like, yeah, he's like, my life with God has always been really dull, and I didn't really feel like I knew him. And I heard someone talk about fasting, and I have never done that. And I thought, well, I guess I'll try that. And so he set, I think it was a week or something that he set to fast. And I don't even remember what his fast was, honestly. I don't know if it was food or some video games or whatever. You can fast, whatever. I don't remember what he fasted, but I remember this. He said, when I started fasting, it completely changed the dynamic of my time with God. And my devotional life just became alive. And it made me want to worship God and get to know him. So then I just extended my fast for another week because it was so good. And then he's like, then after that, then I just extended 2 more weeks. And the time that we met, he had been, whatever it was that he was fasting, he had been fasting for a month. And he's like, and I don't want to stop because it's so good that I don't want to go back to how it was. And eventually he did. And I don't know that it would be healthy to just forever, whatever it is that you're fasting, if you just do it forever, at some point it loses its meaning. Because if you're fasting something, it should be something that you want or desire, something that takes your time and attention. But I remember just talking to him, and he was so excited about how he had grown and changed, and he was just blown away. I didn't know that fasting could do that. And I remember, I was proud, and I remember thinking well, it's one of the first times that you've actually decided to do what God said, even when it cost you something. Whatever it was that he was fasting. It was and God responded to that and honored that and moved in you, and that's amazing. A lot of people don't and won't fast because all we think of is, well, I don't want to miss out on blank. Common fasts that I've done, that I know a lot of high schoolers have done, has been fasting a certain type of food, or fasting fast food, or fasting one meal, a day, or fasting TV or their phone, social media, or very common fasts. But like I said, a lot of people don't and won't ever fast something because all they will think about is, I don't want to give that up. I don't want to not eat fast food. I don't want to miss a meal or not be able to be on my phone. And they don't think about that they're able to gain something so much better than what they're setting down, even though it's just for a time. And I think about like that kid. I think, what would you have missed out on if you were too just self-absorbed, lazy to ever decide to fast? He just randomly decided to do it, which is rad. But I think if you didn't do that, you'd be in the same stale place. You probably wouldn't be around. And you would have missed out on this incredible intimacy with God that you've developed. And for us, I think, how many things might we have missed by just not thinking about this or wanting to practice it? How many situations might have been radically changed? Like I said, all throughout Scripture, and you can look it up. There's so many more than I shared. We see God responding in really powerful ways when his people would humble themselves by fasting. When his people would seek and want to hear from him and pursue that by fasting. How many of those have we missed out on? How many times has God been well, I want to do that, but I want them to fast and pursue me. I want them to take it seriously. And we've just been no, I like whatever. I like my cereal. I like Chick-fil-A. I'm not going to do that. And again, I also think some of us maybe just didn't know. I think there's probably a lot of us who didn't understand, oh, this is not just some like extra holy spiritual practice for like monks over here to do, but like in our lives, we can practice this and it honors God and is to our benefit. It strengthens my spirit in a way that that I think is hard to replicate with anything else. There's a great power in denying ourselves when we know we're very often just guided by our desires. Especially in high school. Like you guys, it's part of it's, you get the rep for it, but we're grounded in reality. Like high schoolers are just, like your life, most high schoolers, maybe not you guys, are just driven by your desires. What you think is going to make you feel good or make you happy or whatever, satisfy you in the moment. But how many things have we missed out on because we were unwilling to give God our attention, to take this fasting thing serious? So I want to encourage you guys, before you leave tonight, to think about what might it look like for you in your life to practice some kind of fast. Now, I want to explain how a fast works and so you know practically what that can look like. And it could be different for everybody. And if the person next to you is doing some fast that seems really like intense to you and really long, cool, don't do that. Do what you feel like works for you. So I want to share some like practical truths if we're going to talk about fasting, and I'm going to encourage you to do it, which I am. Some ways to fast. Here it is. It should be a set length of time. Not just like, yeah, I'm just going to fast this until I just feel like I'm ready to be done. That's never going to work. I will feel like I'm ready to be done in 2 minutes. And even no matter how important it is, like having a set length of time gives you a goal to work towards and also gives you accountability. Because it's like, for me, there's a few close people in my life where I'm like, hey, like, pray for me, like, I'm fasting this. I'm not trying to share with everybody, hey, I'm fasting, like, think that I'm spiritual. But there might be a few close friends, I'm like, hey, hold me accountable in this, because I said, for whatever, today, or for this week, or whatever, I'm going to fast something. So it should be a set length of time, and it should be realistic and not unhealthy. If you're like, yeah, I'm going to fast all food for 30 days, I'd be like, cool, like, let me know when you go to the hospital because you collapsed. Don't do that. Like, figure out something that's realistic and is going to work for you. If you've never fasted before and you feel like, oh, this is going to be an interesting exercise, yeah, start with something small. And then you can maybe expand it from there, but make it realistic. It doesn't have to be food. Food is easy because you'll always be hungry, and like very often when I'm fasting, it'll be because I'm pursuing the Lord for an answer about something, or I want God to move. So every single time my stomach growls or I think about food, it's like, all right, cool. It's going to remind me to like pray and like, why am I hungry right now? Oh yeah, because I'm fasting for such and such. So it doesn't have to be food, even though that's easy, but it should be something that we regularly give attention to. Regularly. So if I decide, you know what, I'm going to fast running marathons, that's going to be absolutely ineffective and a stupid thing to fast because I've never run a marathon. I don't expect to ever do that in my life. That doesn't make sense. So if you're going to fast, it should be something that you regularly give attention to. Like I said, that's why food is so easy, because it's just like there for all of us. Your fast should have a focus or purpose. It should have a reason that you are doing it. Now, that focus or purpose could be as simple as, God, like, I want to experience more of you. Like, I want to sense your Holy Spirit more than I do right now. It could be, I want to grow in self-control. So I just want to fast something just so I can strengthen self-control. But we shouldn't just do it for the sake of doing it with no thought or expectation. Like, well, John said to do it, so let me just pick something and see how it goes. There should be a reason. Attention should be especially given to encountering and hearing from God. So if I'm fasting something, I should recognize there are going to be some things that contribute to this being more successful, and there will be some things that will probably not help my fast for me to ignore. So when I say things that should be especially given attention to, I'm talking about things like worship and fellowship, devotions like prayer and Bible reading, avoiding spiritual distractions. So if I am in a period where I'm wanting to fast something, those things, I need to make sure that those are happening regularly in my life or in my week. Like this week, if I'm deciding I'm going to fast breakfast every week, but I don't think about worshiping God or being in his word or going to church, like I'm going to miss out on a lot of opportunities of things that God might want to do. God might want to speak to me about ways he might want to grow me. And so when I'm fasting, I got to make sure that those things have my attention and are a priority. And when I say avoiding spiritual distractions, that could be a lot of different things, but whatever might get in your way, trip you up, keep you distracted from what you're fasting about. But again, I want to just raise the question. I want to invite the band up here. How many things, us in this room, how many answers to prayer are we sitting on? Are we not seeing because we haven't been willing to pursue God through fasting? Like how many radical changes in relationship with God, like this other student I mentioned, how many of those have not been experienced yet because we've not realized, oh, this is like a spiritual discipline that I can practice and grow in my relationship with God? How many miracles have we not witnessed or heard about because we haven't taken situations seriously enough to withhold some things from ourselves to fast about them?